Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly educational meeting for June. This meeting has been a long time coming. Um, we're going to talk about optimizing bone health. And this is a topic I've been wanting to cover for a while, but this was my first time giving this presentation. So every time I'm putting a presentation together for the first time, it takes a little bit longer. And so I got delayed a couple times. So now I am ready. The presentation is pretty bare bones factual. There's not a lot of graphics or anything, but I think just the information hopefully is very impactful and it doesn't need a lot of frills to make it interesting. So I will share my screen. No videos for this one. All right. So my main focus with this presentation as well is how we can optimize our bone health. So not focusing on pharmaceutical, treatments, medication. Those are certainly things to talk to your doctor about, but that's not what I'm going to focus on here. I want to talk about things that you can do on a regular basis and choices you can make that can help your bones be healthier and stronger. I am sharing information, really all the information in this whole presentation. Well, pretty much almost all this information, maybe a teeny bit is added, but is from the book written by Dr. Michael Greger, How Not to Age. He is a medical doctor, was internal medicine, and he has dedicated his career to nutrition and nutrition information and how it can influence our health. So he has had a website called nutritionfacts.org for a long time that has a lot of videos and blogs and information. He goes really deep into the nutrition research, looking at all different health conditions and different topics. So his first book that he wrote was called How Not to Die. And he took the top 15 killers in the US and went diagnosis by diagnosis and what we could do, especially with regards to nutrition, to decrease our risk of being diagnosed with those illnesses. And, basically, even if we are, being able to maintain the healthiest person that we can be. So he also wrote a book, How Not to Diet, which is about weight loss. And then this most recent one is How Not to Age, the scientific approach to getting healthier as you get older. And I have the book right here. These are thick books. I've got a lot of notes in here. And I have not even read the whole thing yet. I'm listening to the audiobook, and then I also have the physical book. I like having both. I like listening to the audiobook. He reads it, so that's entertaining. But his books are dense. There is almost a citation for like every single sentence in the book. The number of citations for this book is like 10,000 or something like that. It's just unreal. 8,357 I see there. So yeah, 8,000, over 8,000 references for this book. It's just incredible. So I have not made it through the whole thing, but when I listened to the chapter on bone health, I was like, oh, this is really good information. This is exactly what I want to share. The contents of his book, the first section he talks about is slowing 11 pathways of aging. So this is really interesting to read about. And there's a lot of what we eat and how it matters in terms of these different pathways. He then has a section on optimal anti-aging regimen, also very interesting. Then he goes through preserving function. So preserving your bones, your bowel and bladder function, your circulation, your hair, hearing, hormones, immune system, joints, mind, muscles, sex life, skin, teeth, vision, and dignity. So this section I really like, what it's organized by. I think that's a really helpful way to think about things. And for many of us, all of these areas are important. For some people, certain areas might be more important. Some people may have changes to their bowel and bladder function, and that chapter might be extra interesting. Some people may have arthritis and joint pain, and there are things we can do both with regards to what we're eating and other lifestyle factors that can help that health as well. And so all of vision too. My own experience with vision is that I was starting to have a change in my vision for distance where I needed glasses when I was driving at night, and I needed glasses in school when I was in physical therapy school, if I was sitting further back in the room to be able to see the board and slides and what was written. I had my driver's test that was maybe like 13 or 14 years ago. And I just could barely read the letters on the vision test. Like I was kind of squinting and it was difficult. And I thought, oh no, the next time I go in for my driver's license renewal, I'm going to have to wear glasses and then it's going to be on my driver's license and I'm going to have them all the time. And I didn't want to have to wear them all the time. I'm kind of lazy about wearing them. My world is just a little bit blurry in the distance, but I didn't really mind that. So during that time, though, I switched to being exclusively plant-based in my eating. And when I saw an eye doctor to get an update in my prescription had improved, not worsened, since I had gotten those glasses in physical therapy school. And then when I went to renew my license, the most recently, I did not have a problem reading the letters. So that was very interesting. So I do think that my own dietary change that I've made has had a positive impact on my vision. Then his last section is Dr. Greger's Anti-Aging 8, introductions, nuts, greens, berries. Don't know what that is. Prebiotics and postbiotics, caloric restriction, protein restriction, NAD+, and conclusion. So this is a book that I would say is a lot to take in. It is difficult to read the whole thing, but I think taking it one section at a time and reading and, maybe going to the topics that are most interesting to you or that you want to make a change in would be the best way to approach the book. But I highly recommend it. Just so much information. So let's dive into it. So just as an introduction, so literally meaning porous bone, osteoporosis is characterized by reduced bone formation, excessive bone loss, or a combination of both. So throughout our life, we are laying down new bone. We're also losing bone. And so at a certain age, we're laying down more than we're losing. And then in many cases, that transitions over time at a certain age or with activity levels, and we start losing more than we're laying down. And that's when we can develop osteoporosis. It could be one or the other. And there are mechanisms that work on both sides. So this can lead to bone fragility and contributes to millions of fractures a year. Overall, the disease of osteoporosis is estimated to affect 200 million people worldwide. The good news is that osteoporosis need not occur. Based on a study of the largest twin registry in the world, less than 30% of osteoporotic fracture risk is heritable. Research concluded that fracture prevention efforts at older ages should be focused on lifestyle habits. This is consistent with the enormous variation in hip fracture rates around the world, with the incidence of hip fracture varying tenfold or even 100-fold between countries, suggesting that excessive bone loss is not an inevitable consequence of aging. So that's important. What is it? And is it our destiny, or is it more modifiable than we think with lifestyle? Which the answer is yes. What can we do or not do ourselves to improve our bone health? So I'm going to have a summary at the end as well to review all these things, but these are the different things that he talks about in his chapter. I've organized them slightly differently, kind of in a way that made sense to me. But these, are some things that we can consider. So one, avoid acid blockers when possible. So these are the stomach acid blocking proton pump inhibitor drugs with brand names like Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium, Protonox, Acipex. They are among some of the most popular medications in the world. Dozens of studies, totaling more than 2 million people, show higher hip fracture rates among both long and short-term users at all dose levels. He talks even more about this in his book about, what it's helpful for, but how, when you have reflux, there are other ways that could be treated. And he talks about how it can be challenging because these are medications that for some people, once they get started, are difficult to go off of because of kind of withdrawal symptoms or side effects. So this is something, though, to be aware of. And there are other reasons not to take PPI drugs whenever possible. But if this is something that you can manage to avoid, good. Number 2, don't smoke cigarettes. I think we're of a generation where at least in my life, cigarette smoking is becoming way less than I think even when I was a kid, and certainly past generations. There was a long time, when cigarettes kind of first came out that people didn't realize the health risks, both with regards to lung cancer and other factors. A lot of people smoked cigarettes and that helped them control their weight and, was an appetite suppressant. So now we know smoking cigarettes is not good for us. Many less people smoke than used to. And so hopefully that kind of becomes a generational thing where maybe there's going to be a wave of better bone density because less people are smoking. But in case you are someone who smokes right now, this is another reason to consider stopping. For decades, we've recognized that cigarette smoking can have a major effect on bone health, increasing lifetime risk of hip fracture by about half. So don't smoke cigarettes. Avoid dairy. A Swedish research team performed a set of studies involving 100,000 men and women, followed for up to 20 years. They found that milk intake appeared to increase bone and hip fracture rates as well as shorten people's lives. Milk for a long time has been marketed to do a body good and to be good for our bones. Some constituents of milk, vitamin D, calcium, protein, are certainly good for us, but dairy is not the best way to get those nutrients. Dairy has a lot of other negative aspects to our health as well. And when it comes to bone health, the correlation is strong that higher dairy intake increases risk of fractures. So we want to avoid dairy as much as possible. Avoid alcohol. A meta-analysis on the effect of alcohol on osteoporosis found that compared to abstainers, people who sipped 1 to 2 drinks a day had a 34% increased risk for developing osteoporosis. Having more than 2 per day bumped up that elevated risk to 63%, which appears to translate into an increase in hip fracture risk. This may be partially from alcohol's negative effect on bone health, but also because of increased fall risk, because alcohol can affect our balance. So especially I'd say people who are drinking more than 2 drinks per day, they are probably experiencing some change in their balance with that amount. So avoiding alcohol, there are multiple good reasons to do that as well. Alcohol is not good for us. It's related to increased risk of cancer and other things. So again, that is a good one to just minimize, reduce, avoid as much as possible. And also avoiding sugary soda. Sugary soda appears to cause negative effects on bone by increasing the calcium loss through urine. So those are the things that we are going to try to avoid: acid blockers, cigarettes, dairy, alcohol, and sugary soda. So try to avoid or minimize those items. That is going to help us out a lot. For supplements, so what Dr. Greger goes through is that it is best to get calcium from your food. There has been kind of a pendulum swing where at one point calcium supplements were recommended. These days it's a little bit less common, but some people are still taking them. Some people are still being recommended to take them. However, research shows that calcium supplements appear to raise risk of heart attacks and strokes. That's a typo there. Fix that. Randomized controlled trials suggest a 64% greater risk of hip fractures with calcium supplementation compared to placebo. So that's confusing. Evidence suggests that dietary calcium intake is not something most people need to worry about, though. So most people, if they are eating enough food, they are not going to be deficient in calcium. So if you are overall not eating enough, if for people who have anorexia or really have a hard time eating enough food, then you might actually be taking in too low of calcium, but most people do not have to worry about that. The goal is at least 600 milligrams of calcium daily via calcium-rich plant foods, preferably low oxalate dark green leafy vegetables, which include all greens except for spinach, chard, and see how many typos there are in here. And beet greens, which those are healthy, but they do not have very much calcium in them. So other greens is your best source, trying to figure out, okay, how can this happen on a daily basis? Is it going in a smoothie? Is it a saute? Is it a salad? Is it a snack? How are you going to get those greens in? But it is best to get them from your food. The way that we absorb calcium from our food is different than when you're taking a supplement. And again, if the information that I bring up today, you see and you think, wow, that's interesting, I want to know more, then I would recommend getting his book, because what I've included in this presentation is probably a quarter of the information that's in his book. I was trying to kind of simplify it, but if you're interested in knowing more about any of these topics, there's more information in the book. The other supplement to consider is vitamin D. So what the research shows in this case is that high and low doses are not helpful. So research showed women on medium dose levels, which was 1,600, 24, or 32 units a day, were significantly less likely to fall than those given the lower dose, which is 4,800 units a day, or higher, 4,000 to 4,800. So this is obviously something to work with your doctor on as well. Vitamin D levels can be measured. And so you can see, are you within a healthy range? Are you deficient? There probably are certain situations and examples where you maybe should be on a higher dose. But in this research, it was a medium dose that was more effective in actually helping people do better. So vitamin D is a supplement definitely to consider. Have your levels checked, talk with your doctor, and consider taking vitamin D. Ideally, you do not take calcium unless absolutely necessary per your doctor. So now getting into foods to eat. This is a bigger section. So habitual tea consumption is associated with significantly lower risk of hip fracture. They've done some research, though, trying to do like green tea extract, and that did not show to be beneficial. So it's a little bit tricky to know, what about the habitual tea consumption? Is the benefit? Is it something in green tea? Is it something about actually drinking tea in terms of like the fluid intake? Or is it, in some cases, it's that you have a habit like drinking tea, and that also means like you are someone who is less likely to be drinking alcohol and more likely to be doing a certain form of exercise like Tai Chi or something. So, this one, it sounds like they don't really know the exact mechanism, but again, especially if you like tea, doesn't hurt to incorporate tea into your routine, given that there is an association. Almonds may be able to help prevent bone loss, but not build bones. So at the beginning, I was talking about there's bones being like, or components being laid down on our bones all the time. And then we're losing some bone. And so what's the ratio of each of those? So we want to lay down more bone, but we also want to prevent the bone loss. And so almonds may be able to help prevent bone loss. So almonds are something, on nearly a daily basis would be a good idea to have, not to have other, healthy nutrients in them as well, but almonds specifically for bone health. The consumption of vitamin C rich foods is associated with lower risk of bone loss, osteoporosis, and hip fracture. 5% lower hip fracture risk for every 50 milligrams of vitamin C a day, which is about the amount in one orange. So yeah, maybe, during the season, you have a couple oranges a day. Maybe you have a grapefruit and an orange. Have some cuties. I do emergency, not every single day, but that's one of the things that Dr. Mishley recommends in terms of helping medication absorb, and also higher levels of vitamin C can help keep things moving in terms of the digestive tract. So there's some additional benefits there. So thinking, and look up and see what are the foods with the most vitamin C. That might be a list to post and kind of remind you when you're doing your grocery shopping or when you go to get a snack each day, choosing those foods. One orange, 5% lower risk is pretty significant. That's kind of a big deal. After feeding rats more than 50 different foods, the fruit found to preserve their bones the best was the prune, and the leading vegetable was the onion. So prune, basically he suggests having like a prune and almond little trail mix that you make for yourself. And of course, lots of things are going to be beneficial, but prunes, again, are also good for digestion. So multiple benefits there. And dried fruit is kind of one that's easy to have around. It lasts a little bit longer. It doesn't require a lot of cutting or prepping to eat it. So it's a pretty convenient one to have around that could be helpful. And then onions. I know a lot of people have a sensitive stomach for onions. In many cases, if you start small and, increase the amount that you eat over time, a lot of times your microbiome can change so that it can digest that food. If you absolutely hate onions, of course, there's plenty of other things you can do. But if you like onions, I do actually eat onions almost every single day. I have them in a salad. I have them on a breakfast sandwich on the weekends. If I make a sandwich, I put that on. If I have a veggie burger, I have onion on it. If I make, any type of stir fry or anything, if we have fajitas, tacos, sometimes it's cooked onions, sometimes it's raw onions, but that is something that I eat a lot of. And I really like them. So I guess I'm lucky in that way. The research showed that 5 or 6 prunes a day may preserve bone density. And overall, he said, yes, they looked at all these different things and prune and onion were the best, but many, many foods are going to be helpful. And so you basically just want to focus on eating as many fruits and vegetables as you can each day. That's the main focus. Foods to eat, continued. In individuals 65 or older, the greater the estimated ratio between acid forming foods and alkaline forming foods, the greater risk of hip fracture. So we want to eat more alkaline forming foods, less acid producing foods. So this image shows the ones that are the most acid producing: fish, pork, poultry, cheese, beef, eggs, dairy, bread, rice. So you can really see, though, it is more of the animal products, whereas beans, fruit, veggies are the most alkaline producing. So to prove the cause and effect, it was a 2-year randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials were performed in which 3 added servings of fruit and vegetables, or the equivalent of 6 total, failed to have an effect, but 9 daily servings of fruits and vegetables worth of an alkaline forming compound was able to successfully increase bone volume and density. So that's kind of our target, is 9 servings a day. And it'd be interesting to see, how many servings are you getting right now? Are you anywhere near that? If not, then you've got lots of potential to improve. If you're pretty close to that, then the goal is maybe to just get over that threshold. Some people like to play a game where, again, they're kind of keeping track of how many. And this is, my understanding is that this does also include, other plant forms. So legumes, beans, whole grains. If we're trying to get to that 9, we're trying to get 9 of those plant foods. So thinking about, what do I have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks? Can it be getting as many fruits and vegetables in as possible? This shows that buffering the dietary acid load of a typical Western diet with enough fruits and vegetables may help prevent bone loss. So in this case, they didn't reduce or minimize, as far as I know. They didn't take away any foods. They just increased the fruit and veggie to make the ratio better. So, this data isn't saying that you have to be vegan or fully plant-based, but obviously it's easier to adjust the ratio if you reduce some of these things and eat more of these things, then you can be accomplishing a benefit from both sides. But even if you keep eating these, if you can eat more fruits and veggies, it can still help your bone health. Soy. So there was a lot on soy, which soy is edamame, which are the little green pods that have kind of the beans inside. You might have at an Asian restaurant. You can steam them. I find them delicious. You can make them when they're still in their pods and then eat them out of the pods after you've steamed them or cooked them. Or sometimes you can buy them where they've already been pre-shelled and you can add them to a salad. Soy and edamame is made into tempeh and also into tofu and soy milk. And there are lots of different products out there made of soy. For a long time, there has been misinformation, probably even disinformation about soy, saying that it's negative for things like breast cancer and that men are going to, have too much estrogen and start exhibiting female characteristics. And that, I think, is basically coming from the meat industry's fear of soy being a good substitute for people, a place for them to get their protein. And so they're putting a lot of incorrect information out in the world to try to scare people away from eating soy, because over and over and over, in so many different ways, so many different studies, soy is shown to be beneficial really to almost every aspect of our health. It helps women going through menopause have less heat flashes. It helps reduce risk of cancer, even after having had cancer. So just soy is good for us. I'm really happy that I love soy. I eat tofu almost every single day. I'm going to start drinking more soy milk. I've kind of been doing a little bit more oat milk, but I'm going to switch and do more soy. But tofu, there are just so many different ways you can eat it. Highly recommend getting into it if you haven't already. So to talk about the research, a 2020 meta-analysis of more than 6 randomized control trials of soy phytoestrogens with postmenopausal women found significantly improved bone mineral density compared to control in the hip, spine, and wrist. In a 2-year study, for example, soy milk was compared to a transdermal progesterone cream. So that was supposed to be treating low progesterone, and a placebo control group. The control group lost significant bone mineral density in their spine over 2 years, whereas the progesterone group lost significantly less, but they still did have a loss. However, the group drinking 2 glasses of soy milk a day ended up with more bone than when they started. This is huge. And like I said, this was in postmenopausal women, I believe. So let's get that soy milk and cheers to it. Soy milk also appears to have the additional benefits of reducing risk of breast and prostate cancers, improving gut health, decreasing inflammation, improving insulin resistance, help with stroke rehabilitation, improve walking speed, exercise endurance, grip strength, muscle functionality, lower blood pressure, and lower LDL cholesterol. Nutritionally, soy milk is considered the best choice for replacing dairy milk in the human diet. So if you are switching to plant-based, there's a lot of options. There's soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, coconut milk, cashew milk, and others. I have mostly drank oat milk. I like it. I don't know, there's a good one where it's really just oats and water, and that's what I'm going for, is something that is as simple as possible. But seeing this data, definitely I'm going to incorporate more soy milk into my diet. Soy foods have consistently been significantly associated with 20 to 50% lower risk of fracture in women. So soy, friends, if you take one thing home from today's meeting, I hope that you are willing to try some form of soy and not be afraid. If you've ever heard that it is not good for you, I hope that you feel free to do more research and explore things. But saying that because there are phytoestrogens, it is negative for your estrogenic system, that is incorrect. In this article that summarized things, increased consumption of plant foods is associated with increased bone mineral density. In healthy middle-aged population with normal bone mineral density, an increase in plant food consumption, either alone or in combination with a diet containing meat, is associated with improved bone mineralization markers. This positive relationship is most likely due to the extensive range of micronutrients and phytochemicals packaged within plants. So again, here they say whether it's exclusive plant or with a diet containing meat, it is still good and better for you. So if you are someone who doesn't want to make changes in terms of eating less of certain things, you can just focus on eating more of the good stuff. So moving on to exercise. And I did want to watch this video from Dr. Greger. So this is one of the videos from nutritionfacts.org, and you can kind of see he has pretty quick snapshots of the videos, but I find them very interesting and informative in a short amount of time. So let's see. I'm going to have to move my share over though. Share that and start this video.
We have a lot of choices to make about our diet. Add to that doing the right thing when it comes.
That is not the video. This is it.
When it comes to bone health, it's use it or lose it. Physical activity is considered a widely accessible, low-cost, and highly modifiable contributor to bone health. Exercise transmits forces through the skeleton, generating signals that are detected by our bone-building cells. This is why the National Osteoporosis Foundation, International Osteoporosis Foundation, and other agencies recommend weight-bearing exercise for the prevention of osteoporosis. These include high-impact exercise such as jumping, aerobics, and running, as well as lower-impact exercises like walking and weight training to create those mechanical signals that spark bone growth. But sufficient intensity and frequency are critical. The large variation in bone benefit across different studies, from negligible changes to substantial improvements in bone mineral density, have been attributed to the adequacy of the exercise regime. To improve measures of bone strength at the spine and hip, the most effective exercise training protocol appears to be a combination of progressive resistance and impact training at moderate to high intensity. Low-intensity exercise does not appear to be sufficient. For example, while regular walking is often prescribed to prevent osteoporosis, it appears to offer limited benefit for bone loss prevention. On its own, Walking has no significant effect on bone mineral density of the spine, wrist, or overall skeleton, but it has been shown to significantly improve hip bone density in studies that have lasted more than 6 months. More effective would be brisk walking, walking with a weighted vest, or combining walking with more vigorous exercises such as jogging, stepping, or stair climbing. Non-impact activities such as cycling or swimming have been shown to have little or no effect. An elegant study to determine the optimum frequency of high-impact exercises for bone health involved hopping on one randomly chosen foot with a person's other leg acting as the control. Women were randomized to hop 50 times on that one same leg, either 7 days a week, 4 days a week, 2 days a week, or not at all, for 6 months. And the brief daily hopping increased hip bone density, but less frequent hopping was not effective. The only group that built significantly more bone in their hip on the jumping versus non-jumping side within those 6 months was the 7-day-a-week group. If you jump 50 times with about a 10-pound weighted vest on, however, you may be able to preserve your hip bone density with just 3 sessions a week instead of every day. Note, weight-bearing impact exercises may be contraindicated, meaning not advisable in those with severe osteoporosis or recent history of fracture, so make sure you check with your medical professional before you get going.
So a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'm going to talk more about all those things. So basically what he was saying is there have been a lot of studies that have not shown a significant improvement in bone density or bone health, and that it typically is due to too low of frequency or intensity. Just like we talk about when it comes to Parkinson's, there is an intensity level that makes a difference for the brain, so that is true for the bones as well. So what they are finding is that the higher intensity exercise is a more effective stimulus for lumbar spine bone mineral density than low or moderate intensity exercise. So the good news is, though, resistance training, it can be with free weights or machines, but also body weight works. Something like getting a weighted vest, though, could help you increase the challenge level and resistance of your body weight exercises. So that might be something to consider. I don't want people to feel like they have to buy a whole bunch of equipment to have at home, or that you have to go to the gym. You know, if you do have access to a gym and you use machines, great, or free weights, great. But if you are mostly exercising at home, there are many options for you to exercise at home and still receive the benefit as well. One factor is that it needs to be progressive, though. So you can't just be doing the same exercise all the time when it comes to strength training. So if you're learning to do a new exercise and you're doing it with a certain amount of weight, the goal is to progress that over time. That is why we have designed our functional strength training class the way we have. So we are using, you know, a reusable bag, a canvas bag or something like that. And then the goal is to put books, cans of food, other things that are heavy in it to start to get it to be a heavier weight. If you're doing, you know, a few pounds, 5, maybe even 10 pounds, that may not be enough weight to really make a difference. That might be the appropriate place to start, but then we want to be able to progress over time. So using that weighted bag, the piece of equipment, the tidal tank, is also an option. We have videos with the tidal tank in our video library. We're not currently using it because most people don't have one at home, but it is a really nice piece of equipment that is relatively inexpensive and small. But you put water in it, and that's what determines how much it weighs. And so you could start by putting 10 pounds worth of water. And I believe the standard size goes up to 45 pounds, which is a pretty good amount of weight for things like squats and deadlifts. So, you know, if you did want to buy something, that would be something where for any given exercise you do, you could start with the weight lower and add more water on a weekly or every other week basis to be able to progress over time without having to have separate different equipment. The Liftmore study, I'll talk about that in just a second. The good news there is that their exercise intervention was only 2 times a week, 30 minutes each session, and they showed improvement and that it was safe. So that is very cool. It's not like this is something that you have to be doing every day for hours on end. It can be relatively efficient as part of your exercise program. You don't have to have equipment, but weights or making your own heavy stuff works. And a weighted vest is an option, and you can add that to other workouts. Like power moves could be more strength training if you had a weighted vest on. So something to consider. We have a weighted vest here. There's one that was specifically made for bone health and for women who have osteoporosis or who are wanting to improve their bone health, maybe before being diagnosed with osteoporosis. And it's very modifiable. So it has different weights in it. You can take them out, to get started and wear it for a certain amount of time throughout the day. And then you can build up the amount of time that you wear it for. And then you also can add more weight over time. So I think this is a pretty popular piece of equipment that people are using at home and when they go on walks and things like that. So that's something to consider as well, where you don't have to buy a whole bunch of different things, but one thing that could be quite impactful that you could use in various ways. So resistance training, we want to do it. It should be progressive. It does not have to be done with a super high frequency. 2 times a week for 30 minutes is adequate. And you can do body weight exercises, but it often is helpful to do things with something that is weighted, but that could be a household item. And then impact training is the other type of exercise. And that's basically stomping, jumping, things like that, where you are landing and creating an impact. That provides the mechanical stimulation for your bones to lay down more bone and get stronger. So in that study that he showed, basically daily was best. 50 hops, or you could start with stomps on each side. Not totally unreasonable. That's just honestly going to take a few minutes a day. But then ideally, you do want to do it every day. This is good for other things as well. When you're doing a stomp, it's a good Parkinson specific exercise because it's really a deliberate movement to lift and stomp down. And then jumping is often, it can be more aerobic for us. It works on fast twitch muscles and strength training. So there's a lot of good things that come along with impact training. You want to start where you can and work your way up. If you have any joint pain, start with gentle stomps and you can progress those stomps over time. And it might be the amount of impact you're doing might start lighter and progress over time, and also the repetitions. It may not be appropriate to start with 50. Maybe you start with 5 per day, and over the course of weeks, maybe you start with 5 a day on each side the first week. If that's feeling pretty good, you go up to 10. If it's still feeling like a lot, you keep it at 5 for another week. And it is okay to progress slowly over time as long as you are progressing, and you will get there. It won't take that long, but it's important to say, okay, here's where I'm at and here's where I'm trying to get to and work towards that. Just today, Terry came in. She had a surgery, and so she's, healing and starting to get back into exercise. And she had walked last week on the treadmill for 7.5 minutes. And when she came in today, she said, I'll do the same thing. And I was like, how about do a little bit more, like 8 minutes or 8.5 minutes? I'm not saying double your time, but incremental increase over time. You will be surprised where you're starting from. And then if you set that goal and, make a note for yourself or however you want to keep track, but if you keep making just that slight incremental increase day over day, and you're changing maybe like 5%, it's probably pretty doable. And all of a sudden, a few months later, you'll be amazed where you are. All right. So, this way. So this is the Lift More study that showed high intensity resistance and impact training improves bone mineral density and physical functioning in postmenopausal women with osteopenia and osteoporosis. So this study, what he said there was the impact training and things in midlife, and that, if you have severe osteoporosis or a recent fracture, you should be extra careful, which is true. But kind of, if you haven't actually had a fracture and your osteoporosis is like medium, there for a long time, there still was some fear that trying to do this progressive strength training or impact training could be harmful for people. So this was a landmark study implementing this type of exercise to see, is it safe and effective? So just their abstract kind of describing things. So optimal osteogenic mechanical loading requires the application of high magnitude strains at high rates. High intensity resistance and impact training, they call that high RIT, it looks like, high rate, applies such loads, but is not traditionally recommended for individuals with osteoporosis because of a perceived high risk of fracture. The purpose of the Lift More trial was to determine the efficacy and to monitor adverse events of the high intensity resistance and impact training to reduce parameters of risk for fracture in postmenopausal women with low bone mass. Postmenopausal women with low bone mass, T-score of less than negative 1.0, screened for conditions and medications that influence bone and physical function, were recruited and randomized to either 8 months of twice weekly 30-minute supervised sessions. They did, for the strength training, they did 5 sets of 5 repetitions at 85%, greater than 85% of 1 rep max, or a home-based low-intensity exercise program. Pre and post intervention testing included lumbar spine and proximal femur bone mineral density and measures of functional performance, timed up and go, functional reach, 5 times sit to stand, back and leg strength. A total of 101 women, average age of 65 plus or minus 5 years, participated in the trial. The high-rate effects were superior to the low-intensity group for lumbar spine, femoral neck, cortical thickness, height, and all functional performance measures. Compliance was high as well, 92 plus or minus 11%, 85 in the low intensity. So higher participation actually in the high intensity, but good participation in the low impact or control. So compliance was high in both groups, with only 1 adverse event reported. In the high intensity group, there was a minor low back spasm, and that person missed 2 out of 70 training sessions. That's it. So that is an adverse event, but not a significant one. And I think, most people, if they were told, hey, you can actually improve your bone density over time with this exercise, would that be worth a mild back spasm that you missed 2 days of exercise? I think most people would say that it is. Our novel, brief, high-intensity resistance and impact training program enhances indices of bone strength and functional performance in postmenopausal women with low bone mass. Contrary to current opinion, this high-intensity resistance and impact training was efficacious and induced no adverse events under highly supervised condition for our sample of otherwise healthy postmenopausal women with low to very low bone mass. So basically, this study showed that even women with low to very low bone mass were safe and experienced improvement doing this high impact type of training. So this, should be our approach now. And I would say it is not necessarily what's actually happening or what people are being educated on in the real world. So what was the intervention exercise program? That's important to know. So for the Lift More randomized controlled trial, this is the high intensity interval or high intensity resistance and impact training intervention. So participants allocated to the intervention group participated in 8-month, twice weekly, 30-minute supervised program at this university in Australia and this clinic to ensure safe transitions to high intensity exercise. The first month of the intervention comprised body weight and low load exercise variants with a focus on progressively learning the movement patterns of the high intensity exercises. All participants were able to perform the 4 fundamental exercises of the intervention within 2 months. Resistance exercises, it was deadlift, overhead press, and back squat, which means you have a weight on your back as you're going down to a squat and back up, were performed for the remainder of the intervention period in 5 sets of 5 repetitions, maintaining an intensity of greater than 80 to 85% 1 rep max. So 1 rep max is what is the most weight that you can lift only 1 time. So you've still, it's got to be safe. You're not experiencing any pain, but how much weight can you lift? And then basically they do a calculation and you're lifting less than that for the exercise program. You're just doing 5 reps, lifting those weights, and then you're doing 5 sets of that. So when I saw this, I was pretty excited because to me, only 3 strength exercises, it's not, it's not too confusing. It's not too much to learn. It's not too many different things to do. These are good daily things. Like we need to be able to lift up something from the ground. We want to be able to put a suitcase up in an overhead bin or, lift things to put it away in our cupboards in our kitchen. And squat is a very, very functional movement. So I was really excited to see what exactly these exercises were. I think that you can get started with doing something like this, most likely on your own, see how it feels. And then to really work up to this higher intensity, though, that is something it might help to have somebody that you work with or you might need to read up a little bit more how to determine what your 1 rep max is so that you could ideally do a pretty high amount of weight and get the most benefit. But again, you could start with these exercises. They did, 1 to 2 months, just getting familiar with them and doing lighter weights. And then ideally, you could just progress and lift that weight more. So deadlift, picking something up from the floor in front of you, whether it's a bag, just keep adding weight until basically you add weight. And then there might be a day where you say, oh, I can't lift it anymore. And then you've just gone past what your max is. So that's a way that you could figure it out. But I'm very excited because I think this is pretty doable to do, in the real life setting. Participants performed up to 2 sets of deadlifts at 50 to 70% of 1 rep max to serve as a warm up. So they did do that as a warm up and then did the heavier weight. Impact loading was applied via jumping chin-ups with drop landings. Participants were instructed to grasp an overhead bar with their shoulders and elbows flexed to 90 degrees and their hands shoulder width apart with an underhand grip. The participant then jumped as high as possible while simultaneously pulling themselves up as high as possible with their arms. At the peak of the jump, the participant dropped to the floor, focused on landing as heavily as comfortably possible. Each exercise session was performed in small groups with a maximum of 8 participants per instructor. And here, I don't see how many of those they did. So I would have to look to see how many of those drop landings they did. But I feel pretty comfortable based on this research of taking these strength training exercises and then either a drop like this is an option, or, maybe that hopping on one leg that Dr. Greger talked about is another option as well. So yeah, I think this is very exciting. So this study that he mentioned is 50 multi-directional hops daily on each leg. So this research, they only hopped on one leg. They did not hop on the other leg. So the other one served as a control. And yeah, so they showed improved bone density. And again, I think that's something that's pretty doable. And you can hold on to have support for jumping. You could start jumping on both feet. You could start with stomps and progress up to the jumping. There's lots of ways that this could happen. But I think that's pretty cool. And this was published 15 years ago. Is this out there for bone? You can actually improve your bone density with something as simple as this. I think we often hear high impact exercises are good for us, but then we don't know, well, exactly what exercises and how much do I need to do and how frequently. So having such kind of a simple intervention, but that worked consistently is really cool to see. So there is exercise to improve your bone density, strength training, impact training. But then he goes on to talk about how the single most important thing you can do to prevent osteoporotic fractures is to exercise to improve your balance and reduce your risk of falls. The primary cause of fractures, including vertebral fractures, are falls. It is rare for bones while you're standing, to just spontaneously have a fracture. There are, it has happened, but that is not the way that most fractures are happening. The primacy of falls in fracture risk explains a number of apparent osteoporosis paradoxes. For example, despite the fact that about 70% of bone mass is determined by your genes, the heritability of hip fractures appears negligible because the propensity to fall is much less inherited. It also explains the poor predictive value of the DEXA scanning, which looks at bone density and gives you information about your bone density, but it apparently is not that helpful in predicting who actually goes on to have a fracture. A provocative editorial published in the Journal of Internal Medicine titled Osteoporosis, the Emperor Has No Clothes, suggested it would therefore be safer and more effective to focus on fall prevention rather than pharmaceutical intervention. Based on dozens of randomized controlled trials, exercise is the single intervention most strongly associated with a reduction in falls rate. So great work. We're doing it. So how to prevent falls? Tai Chi appears to reduce falls by 19%. Certainly do Tai Chi if you enjoy it. Balance and functional exercises like sit to stand may reduce falls by 24%. That sounds a lot like a power moves class. Multiple exercises, typically balance and functional exercise plus strength training, may reduce falls by 34%. That sounds like a HIIT or a functional strength training class. The reduced falls rates translates into fewer fractures. A recent meta-analysis found that exercise interventions, ones mostly using a combination of resistance exercise to improve lower limb muscle strength training and balance training, cut fracture rates nearly in half. So that's great. 1 year-long trial combining strength training with step and jumping aerobics that focused on balance and agility resulted in 74% fewer fractures over the 5-year period after the study ended even. More than 70% of the women in the exercise group did not have a single injurious fall during those 5 years, compared to more than half in the control group who did. So exercise to make our bones stronger, and also exercise to reduce our risk of falls and reduce our risk of fractures. So to review what was included in this chapter and in this presentation: avoid, if at all possible, acid blockers, cigarettes, dairy, alcohol, sugary soda. Eat more vitamin C rich foods, prunes, onions, almonds, soy, drink tea. Go for 9 servings of fruits and veggies and other plant things per day. Consider vitamin D supplement in the middle range in terms of the dosage. And then exercises for bone health: progressive strength training, 30 minutes 2 times a week, impact training, 50 jumps or hops daily. To reduce fall risk, strength train, functional training, which we do, sit to stand, floor transfer, steps, obstacles, balance training, agility training, step and jumping aerobics. So I love seeing all this. And, we are really trying to take what the research says and support people in implementing it in the real world. So we have a plant-based cooking class on Wednesdays that you are welcome to join. Whether or not you try the recipes, if you just want to come to talk about food and share ideas and things that we like and new fruits and vegetables we've tried, how we're getting in that specific number of servings, talking about what does breakfast look like? What does lunch look like? What does dinner look like? What do our snacks look like? There's a lot to talk about when it comes to food. We're all eating every day, and we have a choice every single meal, every single snack of what we're going to put inside of our body. So we have that cooking class. You are welcome to attend anytime. You can show up one week and not the next. It doesn't have to be a regular commitment, but we'd love to have you. And then in terms of exercise, we have a focus on high intensity exercise, which was kind of for a different reason. It was because that's the research that, is beneficial with Parkinson's, is high intensity aerobic exercise. But the good news is it sounds like it is going to be helpful with regards to our bone health as well. So we have our functional strength training class. I am going to talk to Kate, who will be taking over later in July. And with the new series, we might really focus on what was done in that study and do kind of a home version of Lift More. And in general, what we're including, we typically are doing a hinge that's like a deadlift, a squat, some jumping, something that's aerobics. We're incorporating those things. Our HIIT class on Fridays is going to change to a strength-focused HIIT class. So it's still going to have the high intensity, which is jumping, stepping, high impact exercises. And then the 5 skilled exercises that we do in class are going to be strength training all the time. I did want to fit in addition to our functional strength training class, I wanted to have one more class that was really focused on strengthening consistently. Kate is going to teach that class as well. And I have asked her to, with the high intensity exercises, ideally, it is always something that can be, there's a jumping version that can be done and there's a stepping version that can be done. So you can do the right version for you. And if jumping isn't the right thing for you, that is okay. And maybe you work up to it, maybe not. But we have options, and then we'll really focus on the progressive strength training as well. I'm very excited for that to get started. Our HIIT class in general and boxing, certainly we're doing the high impact on a regular basis. And in many cases, we're incorporating strengthening. We incorporate exercise impact exercises throughout many classes, the stomping that we've done in our legs and sitting and standing down on the floor, balance training. And then we also have our athletic falls training, which our goal is to prevent falls from happening. But then there's even another level of intervention that can be provided, that even if you do have a fall, the more athletically you can fall, the less likely you are to have an injury. And the injury is what we really care about. We don't want you to have a fall, but the injury that can go along with it is what is most important. So we have a section in the video library where we talk about this training that we do here in person. And it basically starts with moving around on the ground, getting comfortable, doing a little bit of tumbling, and then we progress up from there. So like anything that you do with us online, we want to make sure that it is safe. But for a lot of our members, there's a lot that they can do on their own with some guidance from us. So I'm pretty happy. I think that we are incorporating a lot of what this research says when it comes to exercise and when it comes to what we're talking about in terms of our eating. And we have seen multiple people who have improved their bone density over time. So they brought in their DEXA scans and it has gotten better over time. So that is very cool to see. Thank you all for listening, for your attention. I am happy to answer any questions. If you're watching the recording and you have a question, feel free to email me at claire@roguept.com. But I will stop the share and open it up if anyone watching has any questions. Any thoughts?
Good program, Claire.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to see that the pharmaceutical medication doesn't really do that much.
I mean, he has a whole section talking about that, and that, yeah, I don't think that the benefits are very robust. And there are some side effects. And I didn't really want to get into it too much because I didn't want that to be the focus. But he does cover it more in his book. And yeah, he's not a huge fan. And in general, especially since the falls are what is so important, there is no medication really that impacts falls to a great degree. Although I would say, taking proper carbidopa levodopa and being optimally medicated is something that can reduce your risk of falls, because the better you can move, the less stiffness you have. Not having bradykinesia allows you to have a better reaction when you're moving. So I would say that kind of medication, I think, could impact risk of falls. But yeah, otherwise, exercise and lifestyle factors is what it's all about.
This is Susan. I do have osteoporosis, and I have it in my L1 through L4, and it's minus 3.2 T-score. So it's not so great when I do take medication for it, but I like the idea of more exercise. But I'm a little concerned. I have also been having a problem with my neck, and I've had an MRI and a CAT scan, MRI, and other things with that, trying to get, and I haven't been doing my exercises recently, which I know is not helping. I've been trying to get back to it, but I have a lot of stiffness and problems with my left side of my neck. So I was just a little concerned about I think I just have to be cautious about some of the exercises that I might try.
Yeah, I think it's starting with the number of reps and the amount of weight that you feel comfortable. And even like with a deadlift, you're in control of the range of motion. You don't have to go all the way down to the ground and back up.
That was what
an RDL, which it's Romanian deadlift, is where you start in standing and you're holding the weight, and then you hinge through your hips and you lower the weight down just as much as you feel comfortable, and then you stand back up. So I do think, based on that research, that you could get started with a level of exercises and that you could slowly progress that over time. And then if you really kind of felt uncomfortable, I would, try to find a physical therapist in your area who is familiar with this research, who could provide kind of that support and guidance to help you do it well.
Right.
But you're at negative 3.2. And I don't know in that lift more what the
-1.
lowest, because they did say severe.
Right.
So
I was surprised they had -1, I think.
yeah, but I think it was like that was like the minimum. I think it was even more than that.
Right. I've got osteopenia in all the other areas, unfortunately, but at least it's osteopenia and not the osteoporosis is in the L1 through L4, the lumbar spine.
Yeah, so I would really, really focus on those fruits and veggies, getting that number up, eating more of the healthy things. And then with the exercise, let me see. This the Lift More study is available free full text. I'm going to I'll put it in the chat. So I would recommend downloading it and reading it and see if there's more information in there. I'll put it in the chat. And I will try to look at this and see as well in terms of, so participants, if they say kind of what the range was, like how bad their osteoporosis was. Is there an actual like cutoff of
Did you say you put that in the chat?
Yes. Did it come through?
I don't, maybe I'm not, oh,
Yes.
wait a minute, it is, yes.
So bone measures. Yeah, I'll have to look at a little bit closer to see if there were people that they actually excluded and what kind of the range was of the DEXA scores. But since they said, moderate to severe, I think that was the whole point of the study, was taking, a group of people that otherwise it was thought to be too dangerous and saying, is it actually too dangerous or not? So here, their lumbar spine. So their lumbar spine T-score on average for both groups is negative 2.1 plus or minus 0.8. So that means it was as low as negative 2.9, which is pretty close to negative 3.
Right.
So yeah, so those women were included in this study and they benefited and did not have any adverse risks.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So,
Claire.
yeah. You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? But yeah, I think we'll try to kind of follow maybe what this study did for strength circuit class. I'm going to talk to Kate about it. I think that would be fun to have that, to do it live and also to have it in the video library. So it's available to go to and incorporate as one of your options for strength training.
Great.
All right. Well, if you think of anything else, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks again.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Bye.